Hey, I'm Guy.
I'm John.
This is our YouTube channel. Subscribe to it. Give this video a like.
Do it now.
Also, check out our podcast down below.
Oh, it's your podcast below. I have my bad. Podcast in the description. Like the video. Subscribe to the channel.
So, two people that thought the Raiders were a playoff team. Neither one of us picked them to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. And they did it in Derek Carr. Looks great, dramatic fashion. Safe to say, John, I don't think there's really much argument for this. The definitive win of the Jon Gruden era for the Las Vegas Raiders.
I think by a country mile. Not even given their history against that team, given the opponent. It's not even just they're the Super Bowl champs, right? Because to me, what they do in the playoffs is irrelevant to the Raiders. It's a team that's been kicking their ass and just is the team in their division.
Especially when you go there.
Their success in the playoffs is just when you close your eyes and you picture Derek in Kansas City, guy, beautiful day, right? It was, and that's a big win for them. He has not played there well in the cold, but
they haven't played there in October or September. They play there in November all the time, or December.
I mean, I'd say it's one of his best divisional games against when either Denver, the Chargers, or the Chiefs are good, like when they've been good over his tenure. That I remember of just 22 of 31, but just he was consistently hitting guys in stride. I'm not even talking about the deep bombs, which is something that I still don't feel great about him throwing, but he hit them today. It was more just like he was just under control. He just played a really good game. Like you could say he was better than Mahomes. I still think Mahomes was fantastic. The reason they lost, the Chiefs lost, right, is their defense.
Yeah, but Mahomes did throw a critical interception late when they needed to get down the field and make a play, right? When they were trying to mount their comeback. Yeah, I thought, to me, the thing about you're right. I mean, you can't hit 2 or 3 deep balls and go, oh, this is who they are now. But the fact that Ruggs came back and he was the one that caught the first deep ball. Obviously, Nelson Aguilar got wide open too. But
he can catch now.
Huh?
He can catch now.
Don't throw a baby. But I do think, I think one thing is clear. When Henry Ruggs is gone, it changes their offense. When he's back, it changes their offense. If Henry Ruggs is on the field, I feel better about the Raiders' ability to hit big plays. And it doesn't even mean that Henry Ruggs will be the one hitting every big play. But you said it to start this conversation, and I think you nailed it. It's not. Yes, it matters that the Chiefs are the defending champs. Yes, it matters that it's the best quarterback in the league. Whatever we could argue, and it's Andy, and that they've. But what really matters is they've dominated you. They are the kings of the division, which is where everything starts in the NFL. The division. They're the kings of the division. Your coach and their coach have been kind of, over the course of their career, obviously very close. And their guy is just, when he's had more weapons, he's been dominant. When it's felt like he hasn't had a full complement, he's been dominant. It hasn't mattered. They have just consistently embarrassed you for the most part. And you went there and won. If you told me the Chiefs had not won the Super Bowl, Mahomes hadn't won an MVP, but just that dominance against you, we just know you got to go through that. We'd actually given up on going through them. Forget about going through them. Just wild card.
I think what was most shocking is they had the stretch in the second half where they were covering. It was like they kept showing these highlights of Mahomes.
You don't mean the spread, you mean the receivers.
Yeah. I mean, nobody was really open. And even when Sammy goes out with a hamstring, Tyreek Hill is, I'd consider him an elite player. You consider him an elite player?
I
would. Kelsey's an elite player. And those guys were kicking your ass in the first half. And whatever he figured out for the first time in his, time as the Raiders defensive coordinator, I thought it was Paul Guenther's finest moment. Because the one thing you would say is Derek and Gruden have had moments, right? With Waller over the last year. Josh Jacobs had a lot of their offense has had a lot of moments, right? Derek's had moments where he's had 3 or 4 touchdowns in a game. Not against the Chiefs, but sunny games. I've seen him play well. It was weird to see it happen against the Chiefs, but he's played well before. To me, the defense in the second half, Mahomes, no one's open. I've never seen that before.
And pressuring, right?
Yeah, but just throwing him off. He's scrambling. He's got nowhere to throw. I did think the one pass that he made across his body,
moving left,
was to Hardeman or Kelsey. I honestly think it's like the top 5 throw he's ever had, and that's saying something.
Well, it's one of those where he throws and
to the left.
You don't even realize who he's throwing it to until the person catches the ball, right? You think he's throwing it to the guy coming across the field the other way.
Because it went by a Chief. It flew by a Chief, and then it hit another Chief. And I was like, he's so good that I think even like Raider fans, if you're 50 or whatever, and you grew up hating the Chiefs, he's just one of those players that you're like, at this point in time in his career, like he hasn't got polarizing like a LeBron or whatever. It'd be like a Steph. You're just like, God, this guy's fucking remarkable. I'm just honored to beat him. And kind of worked them in the second half.
Yeah.
And I think if the Raiders listen, I think we've all said their offense is really talented. If their defense, I tweeted this out, if their defense can just play like that, just serviceable, because the Chiefs are arguably the best offense in the league. If you're going to play shittier teams, in theory, I mean, the Bucs and Browns next 2 weeks, like these next 2 weeks are it's hard, right? I guess they're on a bye this week, but that 2 week stretch is pretty hard. If you can go 1-2 within those two games, all of a sudden you're 4-3 with a win over the Chiefs and a win over. You'd probably rather beat the Browns, right? Because you'd be competing for a wild card spot.
Yeah.
The Buccaneers game, honestly, in a weird way, it's a night game. It's a big game. The Browns game is way bigger for the playoffs, right? Just having a tiebreaker over them if you both end up at 10-6 or 9-7. Now the Browns are 4-1, but they still got to play.
But I would say
Ravens and stuff.
But to me, what the I agree with all that. But what the win over the Chiefs does is now I don't look at the Raiders and go, well, okay, if you had to pick Tampa or Cleveland, I go, okay, can you win them both? Like that's what beating Kansas City does. Is can you win them both? Can you come off a bye and beat Tampa?
Well, because you get the Bucs off a bye, yeah.
Like there's nobody on this schedule that remains that I look at and go, can't beat them. Once you beat Kansas City, now you've proven you can beat anybody. I think. And by the way, that Tampa game is on
feels
Sunday
like the
Night
Ravens
Football.
would be a weird matchup for the Chiefs.
I just mean, yeah, they're not on their, they're not on their,
I know what you're saying.
on the Raiders schedule, but good point.
No,
I'm not saying you
front runs. I just got to get a little jab at. No one front runs like the Ravens. I mean, they just destroy bad teams. Then you see them against a good team. It's like, oh, tie game. Lamar's a little off, but you get them a bad team. That's where I give the Raiders credit. Like today, kind of down. They could have folded. They actually showed a little moxie in the first half, basically tying. That wasn't it 24-24 at half.
Yep.
But it was like there was a point in time in the first half. You're like, this is like a touchdown away from being 28-7, and then they kept swinging. And then by the second half, they played their best football half of the Gruden era. Second half.
Yeah, well, they took that. You're right, 24-24 at the half. They run an 8-minute drive that closes out the third quarter and starts the fourth quarter with a touchdown. They missed the extra point, so it's a 6-point game, and you think, oh, that's going to come back to kill them. Didn't, because they came down the field and scored
game
again.
Of the day to watch, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really get to lock in on Steelers Eagles. That would have been up there too, but no, this was number one. Yeah, I'm with you. Derek was 11-13 for 246 and 3 touchdowns at the half. And you're like, well, you can't keep that up against them. And the answer is, yeah, you can't, but that's okay. They found a way to win a tie game without having, because I think one thing, clearly Derek was good. It wasn't a game that you look at and go, well, that's above his head. Like he's not capable of doing that. He is, like what he did today is, I think, it's some of his best football without question, but he didn't do anything that I thought, oh, that's beyond his capabilities. That's luck. I didn't think that today. Like I just thought he made the plays that he normally makes, plus some plus plays. He threw the pick, came back from it. I mean that, to me, what made it impressive is they were clearly really good, right? They didn't play flawless football though. They won without. They didn't. I would have thought like, okay,
because the Chiefs are good. They're gonna. I mean, Mahomes is gonna make plays, right?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. It's like it'd be one thing if you told me they won, and they just played flawless football. It was one of those days. They were really good, and this is like, I'm complimenting them. It was not perfect football. It was really good, but it wasn't perfect, which is fine. That's mostly how you win. That means
the most remarkable part of the. If you would have told me and you, the Raiders are going to win on Friday, let's just say, how do you think it's going to look? I'd be like, I bet Josh Jacobs runs for like 170. They control the clock. They keep Mahomes off the field and win like 24-17 or 24-20. They really wanted a shootout when their run game, I mean, they ran for under 100 yards. And just the eye test was like, it wasn't like they were controlling the clock. Like they were just, we'll fucking throw bombs with you.
They were plus. I know we don't use this stat anymore, but they were plus 11 in time of possession.
Okay. But didn't it feel like they were winning shootouts, scoring points? And I think the key is, and you had said this when he got hurt, and it's so key, it's obviously great when he's catching bombs because that means you get points. But either whether he catches it or not, he changes their offense. Because unlike he really is close to a Deshaun than he is like a Ted Ginn or like a true, like he's just there to stretch the field. No, he's there to dominate, right? He's there. You hit him. Because the first catch he had where he caught it on the guy's back and rolled over, you go, yeah, this guy's a blue chipper, right? This is the guy. Remember the thing that went viral last year with Alabama, the Henry Ruggs dunk? You're like, hey, everyone, this guy's 5'11".
Yeah.
And it was like he dunked like he was Russell Westbrook. And then you're just watching him so far early in the NFL, he's flying by guys. And it's not Brian Allen of like this is I think Breeland is the guy he smoked on the first touchdown that he just looked like just ran. Sometimes on a slow motion replay in the NFL, I don't think it does justice to speed because it was like he's just running. I think Tyreek because he's a little smaller and more compact always looks like he's hauling ass.
It does look like it. Yeah.
I think when you're like a strider, it doesn't quite, I don't know the adjective I'm looking for, but accentuate, just like really put it into picture how fast you're running. Because I think the guy he's running by is probably running like 4.48. It just turns out he's running 4.27.
I think you're right about the strides, right? And I think a lot of it is about where are you running fast. If you're running fast in space, it doesn't look as fast. Tyreek is usually running fast.
He does a lot of work over the middle.
But I just mean like you get him on an end around and you see 9 other people around him and he kind of fires off like a bullet out of a gun because he goes like lateral, then he goes vertical. Whereas Ruggs is a lot of vertical in open space and the strides are long. And you're right, it just doesn't quite. You don't realize. Maybe it's the grace. You don't quite realize. By the way, and this is probably why time of possession people don't like. Part of this is the Chiefs. Just to go back to that, the Chiefs. A lot of their scoring drives were fast. So anyway, back to Ruggs.
That's where like the game did not feel like a time of possession either way dictated the score.
It felt like you were going to have to make big plays.
I think whenever you take – now Ruggs was coming from Alabama, so I wouldn't compare him to John Ross in the sense. But John Ross' team did go to the playoffs. I think the Ted Ginns, Deshaun's. But Deshaun wasn't a high pick, right? Now, he fell because of character. But I think historically when the guy that you just go, he's the fastest guy in the draft, Hayward Bay, who actually I met at the Combine, lives in Danville, really nice guy. Actually, I really enjoyed talking to him.
Big golfer?
No. With the Combine, then Corona hit. I got his number. I was going to reach out to him, like get dinner or whatever. He literally lives right. He married a girl from Danville. He says he fucking moved here. Remember, he kind of resurrected his career in Pittsburgh as like a role player, special teams guy. A really cool guy, actually. But I think oftentimes when you think just speed guy, and that's really how Ruggs was known, speed, they often miss. And I think it's pretty fair to say if this guy stays healthy, he is in none of those guys' category. Like John Ross, even Ted Ginn, who's had a long, productive career, and Darius became like a role special team guy. This guy could be a star wide receiver, right? Like this guy could go to Pro Bowls.
I feel pretty good about that. I feel really good about that.
He looks like, honestly, he looks like a chief. If I told you, do you think Veach and Andy liked Ruggs? I'd be like, yeah, he's probably number 1 guy on their board.
Yeah.
You think?
Yeah.
Who do you think their favorite wide receiver was?
Him.
It had to be. Probably him or CD.
Part of it, he doesn't just make plays where he's got to be running 5 yards past a guy. The catch he made was a really difficult catch. The first big deep ball he caught.
Hasn't he made a couple in that his first game? I think he made a catch down the sideline.
He makes difficult catches, like contested catches. So he can obviously, maybe that's where the jumping ability comes.
Who's the wide receiver coach at Alabama? I'd look into hiring him if I was a team.
Well, if you noticed, are all the rookie wideouts? I mean, Chase Claypool looks like a beast. He was like the last of all those guys to go. Ayuk has flashed.
Jefferson's already had a big game.
Jefferson, he's been really good for Minnesota. I'll admit we haven't gotten to see the Broncos in like a month, so I don't know what the latest with Jerry Jeudy is. Maybe they'll play next week.
He gets open. He drops some balls.
But I just mean like they're not playing. They haven't played.
Rager's hurt, but CD makes plays. All these guys. Every time a Cowboy game's on, my Twitter's like, God, CD Lamb is a baller.
He took a huge hit late in the game. I saw. I don't know. Is Michael Pittman hurt? Did he play today?
Yeah, no, he had like surgery on his calf. I saw a shot of like from the Cowboy sideline, kind of at like ground level, and he was on a knee, and just the backs at 88. He does look. Remember how cool Dez looked in 80? Like he looks sweet in the net. I was like, damn, that guy.
He does look
wasn't
good.
Michael Irvin was 80. It
CD
popped.
looks a little bigger in the NFL than he did in college, to me, honestly.
I agree. I thought CD was skinny in college. CD's good. CD's
anyway.
Good. Ruggs,
I feel great about
Ruggs. Is going to be as dominant if you get him the ball because he's gonna get open. Because there's not going to be guys that can run with him, right? There's just not.
Well, and if you can trust him on 50-50 plays, it makes him even better, which clearly you can. Because he can jump. That's the thing.
Yeah. One dominant part about their offense is they kind of got a sweet guy at every level, right? You got Waller can just annihilate linebackers. They're not going to be able to cover him. Ruggs can just haul ass on the deep part of the field. And Renfro, has made a living for now 4 or 5 years at the highest level of college football and now in the NFL of working the middle of the field. Because it naturally is going to become open when people either break on Waller or chase Ruggs. Renfro is going to have a really good career because he's going to spots are going to be open. And the scout in me, we used to have been like, dominates sitting in zones. And he's just great at, you just see an opening. It's like a natural reaction for him to stop and become a target. And he's got good hands or just kind of float to the ball. His instincts are, I remember a guy on the Raiders told me, I'm like, what makes him so good? They're like, his lateral quickness is outstanding in his mind. The guy's like brilliant moving, right? Because he's had to be. Because Ruggs is like, well, I'm just going to run by everybody. Yeah. Waller now is like, I'm the best athlete on the field. Hunter's like, I got to outthink all these guys.
And he's earned Derek's trust because he makes really difficult catches consistently. The other thing was they did a good job. This Kansas City didn't create a ton of pressure on Derek.
No. Trent Brown was back for the first time, and he played 3 snaps before this.
Yeah, that was a big deal. But even you could.
There was a point in time in the game where they mentioned like he's probably winded.
Evan Washburn's like, yeah, they're sidelined in the sun. It's hot.
But he made it.
But he did. He did.
He paid a lot of money, so he's got to play well.
I think so much of the Raiders has been about potential. Will they? Against the Chiefs, it's not the first time they've done it, but it's like, okay, if that's who you guys are, then yeah, you can win playoff games. If that's who you are, you can win playoff games. And I just wonder, maybe now the confidence of having done it against that team in their division.
Well, here's what I think is pretty fair. I'll end my Raider thoughts on this. Every time Derek kind of has the cliche, stupid answer after a loss of, I'm tired of losing. I think the majority of just common sense Raider fans and people around the NFL kind of roll their eyes and just be like, Derek, just say nothing. It's better than saying that. I think all anyone's looking for him is just make plays, man. Just make plays. Just make plays. I think part of it is like, bro, you can't keep saying that when I'm watching you're not making any plays. Like today, you were just a playmaker. And it's like, because I think the knock on him, and we've always supported, and Gruden can talk about where's PFF now on the checkdowns? Well, John, he checks the ball down a lot. Like they're not making that up. Russillo always has great points about like, just because James Harden has won 50-point playoff game doesn't mean that his entire life's career before that, he's been a terrible playoff player. Like it doesn't change his history. Like the facts are the facts. But we've always supported like, unlike Alex, who never had a strong arm, so it was like, why can't he mess with Ginn or Randy Moss? Because he can't throw that far. Ask Andy Reid. Remember that he had that one season when they were like 12 wins? The wide receivers didn't have a touchdown. It's like, that's kind of crazy, but still, it was like kind of understandable.
No, it's really crazy.
That is nuts.
It's one of the craziest stats ever.
That's wild because they were good. But I think the thing with Derek is like his arm, if he just stood there and threw, he could, just all the NFL quarterbacks lined up, he would not be in like the bottom 15. Like his arm is good enough. I think the pushback on the Raider fans, and I think if you're not like a scout or whatever, you just start believing like, is his arm good enough? What the fuck's the deal? No, his arm is good enough. He just has to pull the trigger. And today he's pulling the trigger. And to me, with Ruggs, even if you miss, run it again, right? Just keep running it. And do you know what's kind of weird in the NFL? I think teams like, I remember we were talking about this a couple years ago. It really is alarming. Like there are not as many big plays in the NFL, I think, as you think, like on a yearly basis, or even with an individual player. Like Deshaun Jackson's best year, he might have had 3 plays that season of his 100-catch year over 50 yards. Like you'd think, he's probably got 20 plays of over 40-plus yards. No, it doesn't really happen like that. Because when you watch the game, the team doesn't actually take as many shots as you think. Like the Chiefs, who push the ball down at high levels, most of their work, wouldn't you say, is between like 10 and 20 yards? It's not like they did throw some today because they were down, but they're not throwing unlimited go routes.
Well, they
They're
hit one to start. They had the
deep
penalty
breaking
early in the game, right? On one.
Yeah, but you just don't run. Honestly, if you told me you'd run one go post with Ruggs a quarter, I'd be like, yeah, you could probably do more.
Well,
but the coaches never do.
You're right. Now, this isn't the same thing.
Maybe
this
there's
was
a protection
running play,
element there.
Miles Sanders had a 77-yard touchdown run for the Eagles. And I don't even remember what exactly it was on Red Zone, but it was like, that's the longest run. That's the longest touchdown for the Eagles in X amount of years. I'm like, God, really? I mean, like, it's been a long time. I'm like, really? You would think every team has 2 or 3 77-yard touchdowns a year.
And that's not at the 10, right? That's at the 32 or the 27 or whatever.
Yeah.
You know?
Anyway, Raiders look good.
I like watching Ruggs.